fever that wouldn't go down. And just like you said you'd be, you were there, the friend I could always count on. Some kind of miracle healed me. I couldn't have done it alone. I knew I'd be facing death soon again, but for now I was going to go home. Will you be there for me when I really need someone to hold me? And will you care for me? These are the words you told me. I'll be there. I'll be there for you when you really need someone to hold you. I'll be there.
Well, after he was diagnosed, he gave me a call. He called me at home, and he was crying, and he says, "Jimmy," he says, "I'm going to die." And I didn't know what it was. Here I go.
It's okay, Jeff.
That's fine.
But I just remember him saying that he has cancer and he's going to die. And it was just hard for me to understand what it was, you know. You know, he said he had AIDS. And so I heard about AIDS, but I didn't think Jess, of all people, would have AIDS, you know. And he told me, he said, "I'm going to die."
Up to a month before I went in the hospital, I was going to the gym 6 days a week. And whammo, a month later, I almost died. I got real close.
I guess your life can't get any more focused when you know you're liable to die. I mean, that's pretty definite focus.
My mother, point blank, on paper, said that she didn't want me to come home.
I was scared, but I've got a lot of friends around that kept me up.
I remember just feeling like I'd stepped onto another planet. You know, I didn't know anything.
Look, we are individually and collectively being faced with as big a thing as anybody ever gets faced with. You can't go any farther than this. Here we are as a group being assaulted by an illness that is as strange as cancer, maybe a form of cancer, is fatal, has various forms, and is totally unknown to the medical experts of our time. What could be more frightening? Plus it has a gestation period that is unknown in duration, so one can never feel safe. This is a terror with a capital T and of immense proportions.
Let my hand go.
Yeah, open your hand.
Lauren, I took your medium gloves and gave you a whole bunch of small ones.
That's fine.
Okay. We were missing
Let me
it.
get the hemostats on here. And let me undo this.
No, actually, Jack should accidentally just rip it out. We have to restick
Oh. You go flying out that window, too.
I know. That feels okay, right?
Mm-hmm. I'm really surprised when I find out we were getting a little dose of this. I hate to see what a maximum dose would be.
Gary got diagnosed in sort of that first wave, or in that first period when nobody really knew what it was or what the sequence, what the expected sequence would be of having this, this terrifying illness.
I remember I was just crying when he told me it. And it wasn't like a hysterical crying, because I knew by that point I'd gone through some of my hysteria, you know, in the weeks before that. I just burst into tears, and then I had about 30 clients that I saw a week. And the really hard part was I had to go back to my office and start telling people that I couldn't work with them any longer. You know, and some people I'd worked with for 3 to 5 years. And it was also a very kind of funny switch going from I'm the therapist with these people, and then all at once I'm telling them, you know, I'm a patient.
At that time, there were only about 25 cases diagnosed in San Francisco. It was just the beginning of the epidemic, and I think part of me knew on some level that this was that it was just the beginning, that what we were seeing then was going to significantly worsen.
Now remember, this is at a time, AIDS was not a household word. AIDS was not was somewhat talked about in the gay community, unheard of almost in the straight community.
There were a lot of stereotypes about people with AIDS at that time. People viewed them as promiscuous, as drug-crazed, as slightly less than human. I can remember in having people with AIDS over to my house for the first time, I was quite afraid of who they were. What I found was that they were people much like myself, people that had been in relationships for 2 to 5 years, monogamous relationships, that many of them had never had sexually transmitted diseases, that most of them did not fit the fast lane stereotype.
I remember one friend that not long after I had it, he became very upset that I had it. A lot of it was probably his own fear of himself. But he said, yeah, I'm really glad I'm not in that high-risk group. I said, what's the high-risk group? And he said, of somebody who's, you know, going to the bath several times a week. And I said, hey, wait a minute. You know, I don't fit that. I'm certainly no virgin, but I don't fit a lot of the stereotypes that are being thrown around. But that period was very hard, because you were almost having to feel like you had to defend yourself. And that feeling of judgment from people was really, I mean, you have an illness that's life-threatening, and then you have to deal with stereotypes that people use to distance themselves from you and from the illness. That was very hard to take initially.
How did you eventually resolve that? What did you do to?
I think a lot of it was speaking out, particularly at the march, about those stereotypes and letting everyone know we're all at risk. This is not just my fight, it's also got to be your fight.
And Gary said, you know, somebody should do something. We've got to call attention to this. And as a community, we should, and he said, let's have a march. Thinking back, and I know he remembered the wonderful candlelight march that spontaneously occurred the day that Harvey Milk was killed in Moscone.
I just want to say, you all look beautiful here tonight. Your caring's incredible. The fact that you're here tonight testifies to the fact that we're in a major health crisis of international proportions. This disease knows no sexual orientation. It has hit the gay community very hard, but make no mistake, everyone is at risk. I want to tell you a little bit about my experience, having been diagnosed with CAS about 4 months ago. Needless to say, my world turned totally upside down. I don't think I knew that I had so many feelings. And they have hit the whole range. I think one of the best things has been also that there's been a strength in myself that I never knew I had. That's come from inside me and come from loved ones around me. All of you, I thank greatly for that. Take care of yourself and your friends in every way, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And demand state and federal funding. Demand it.
The second sort of level in terms of the homophobia, though, is that, again, I don't think we should be surprised by it. There are lots of people who hate us, and who always will. And I think that what AIDS did was give that a chance to focus and erupt. I mean, it didn't create it. We are no less loved now, no more fear than we were 2 years ago, or 3 years ago. I mean, I just don't believe that. I mean, I think this just gave people a way to focus their religious bigotry, and their homophobia, and their misunderstanding, and their small-mindedness on us, okay? But it was always there. I think, as I said earlier, though, I think it's done something quite different in terms of opening up a certain kind of empathy to us at the same time.
Personally, it was real interesting. After I came back from the AIDS conference in Denver in June, Shanti was approached by one of the local talk shows, morning talk shows, and asked if they could get some people with AIDS to come on and help dispel the fear and hysteria around AIDS. So my friend and I got to the station at 7:30 in the morning, and we were shown into this little room and told that the technicians had refused to mic us or even have us appear on the set, or they would walk off the stage and in effect black out the show for that day. I was devastated. I was really surprised that this was actually happening to me. I had gone to Denver and touched 450 lives and helped educate and sensitize. And to come back and have this happen a few days later, I wasn't prepared for it at all. And it was so funny, because here they wanted us to come and help dispel the fear and hysteria, and it was happening right there in their own studio.
My reason for becoming involved with Shanti goes back almost 30 years. In 1954, just before the vaccine came out, I came down with polio. And at that time, there was absolutely no support system whatsoever. The doctors were good mechanics. They kept you alive. They took care of you like a mechanic does with a car. But as far as the person, there was nothing for myself or my family. I feel like I'm going back again. AIDS and polio, both unknown diseases. No one knew how you caught it. A lot of theories, a lot of ideas how to avoid it. All the feeling of, well, somehow something must be wrong with you if you got it. I felt that isolation. Neighbors who wouldn't talk to me, neighbors who avoided, they'd walk around the block. They'd be good Christians and very polite, but at a distance. Somehow something was wrong if you got polio. Good people didn't do it. Our families wouldn't get it. So I related that so much to the AIDS epidemic here, the isolation that the young men go through, the feeling that they're a leper, all the ideas of how they must have caught it, the different treatment programs, same as polio. The whole thing brought back my problem to me, and even greater the realization that of the support that I didn't have that is so needed. And so my determination was to become involved in whichever way I could with the problem of AIDS.
And there are worse examples. There are examples of gay people who don't want their roommates to live there anymore because they have AIDS. And there are examples of gay people who don't want to be in the same room with persons with AIDS because, in fact, they're afraid of catching it. You know, so we have our own stuff to deal with. It isn't all out there.
I think one of the things that we've learned as physicians have learned about gay men from dealing with this disease is that there really is no stereotype, and that there's a broad range of backgrounds and reactions to the disease, and also reactions to their own homosexuality that sometimes this disease brings out.
You're talking about a life-threatening illness, which means you're not just looking at your gayness, but you're looking at your entire life. You're looking at the fact it may end. You're looking at the unknown question as to why we have it. And a lot of people, one of my clients who's a very healthy client psychologically, but he did come from a fundamentalist evangelical background down south. And it is triggering, as healthy as he is and as psychologically. At the point where he got the diagnosis, of course it came into his mind, is this God's punishment? Now, intellectually he knows that's not true. But you know, those years of training, those years of when we're are most receptive to any training, which is when we're children, you know, we're like sponges. You know, anything that's said to us we take in, and it becomes a part of us. And all of a sudden, all of those things that he felt he had worked through became triggered again in terms of, is this God's punishment?
Does your family know at all?
Yeah.
What's been their response?
Well, my mother said that God was punishing me for my lifestyle. So, and the rest of my family, I have 7 brothers and 3 sisters. I heard from one brother. But the rest of them, I haven't heard a word.
They all know?
Yeah.
And your father?
Yeah. He's, you know, he feels the same way my mother does. So.
Has he contacted you?
He talked to me for a little bit. This was before they knew it was AIDS, so before I didn't actually tell him. I called my brother, and he told him.
How do you know that? Did your mother say to you she felt you were being punished?
Yeah.
Are they very religious?
Very.
That must hurt having to have to hear that.
No, I knew. No. I've known them for a long time, so I knew. They want me to come home, you know, and do what's right so I might be healed.
You.
Wrong.
And Jess was my only son. He was just beginning to start his life. He was 24 at the time he was diagnosed, and he died one day after his 26th birthday. This is a picture of him running the Beta Breakers. Was it 81?
81.
81. And you can see, that was 81. A year before.
See how healthy he is.
Look at
his legs. He had a great physique.
He worked at it because, you know, it's funny, as a child he was a really chubby fatty.
Yeah.
He was fat. He started getting fat when he was about 10 years old.
Up until the age of about 15.
Yeah.
And then he made up his mind that he's going to get his body in shape, and he was determined. And
he was really
He had
fat.
a beautiful body. You wouldn't believe the transformation.
Worked at it, though. He had a lot of determination, and that's the result there. Anyway. This is the one that's kind of devastating.
This was
If
a
you
week
look at
before
this,
Jess died. And
And
you
then-
can see how his cheekbones were...
this was the week that he died, and he was going blind in one eye. You wouldn't know. He didn't know it. And so, I mean, there's just so much contrast.
He would hold a mirror up to his face, and he would look at his cheekbones, and he'd be shaking real bad, and he'd say, "Is something happening to my face, and my bones are coming out?" And you know, he was slowly watching himself deteriorate, and he couldn't stand looking at it, and he'd constantly be looking in that mirror.
Living corpse here, huh?
This is my family. I mean, this is my family. My family disowned me because of the fact that I was gay. And when Jess died, I had nobody. So I was alone. Really, basically, I was very alone. And, you know, to see a mother who could stand by her son until he died,
and be there every night. And not put him down in any sense. Just be there. Just,
That's unconditional love. That's what I term unconditional love. And I have to reiterate it all the time. As a parent, you love your children, and there is just no... maybe I overlove Jess, but I also unconditionally love my 3 daughters just as equally. You do when you're a parent. I can't understand that.
You know, she never condemned him for what he was, his lifestyle. She never condemned him for it, you know. She was always proud of him, you know, she never put him down. It's something that every guy in the gay society would, I mean, there's very few mothers around with that kind of dedication and support for their children as Gloria gave to her son.
I think, though, that gay people are more and more in recent years, and I mean very recent years, I mean the last 2 or 3 years, beginning to think of themselves as having family, as a cultural phenomenon. I'm not saying it just started, I'm not saying we're the first generation to have seen it, but as a cultural phenomenon, I think it's new and I think it's recent. I don't think everybody feels it yet. And I think that it's going to be recognized that we do have a very strong sense of family that does not come out of blood or out of marriage or out of adoption. It's not legal in that sense. It comes out of choice.
And when Danny mentioned to me that he and Bill had talked about becoming a roommate with them, I just thought it was incredible, and yet I thought, well, now wait a minute, that's just how it all works, it seems. It's just part of the big plan. And it came to pass. I mean, it happened. I couldn't believe it. But every once in a while I have to remind them that, you know, something's wrong, folks, and bear with me. Hold me up when I need it, because, I mean, there are times when you do need it. And as proof, I guess, for myself, that more proof anyway, that God's very gracious and very merciful, is the fact that I'm surrounded with 2 of the most loving people. At a time when I thought I was really going to end up very much alone. Because there were a couple of times when I was living out at the beach apartment that I thought it would be very easy just to put myself to sleep. And I hadn't had many thoughts like that.
How did you come to know Joe?
Well, through Dan, basically. He's been involved in the SHANTI program, and when he mentioned the fact that he thought he'd like to have Joseph live with us, we started making the arrangements, and we decided to move out of the other apartment and find a bigger house so that we'd all have plenty of room to live together.
I have my family, but I have a family right here too. It's real nice.
I think that the response to people, to persons with AIDS, the caring and the support, even up to death and afterwards, has been like nothing I've ever seen in terms of a community-wide response. It's remarkable.
I think I feel more proud about being gay than in any time in my life. And I think the pride comes from seeing how well organized the community became in a relatively brief period of time, that the amount of services available that we ourselves have set up, to me, is just astounding. It makes me have more faith in our community, that we can really get off our rear ends and pull something together very fast with a lot of good services.
And I'm on the executive board of directors for the AIDS Fund. That's something else that has happened since we last saw each other. And I handle the welfare or grant part of that work. When people call us and they need money for food or need a month's rent or whatever, then we dispense those funds to the people. We do it directly. We have no red tape involved. The check goes out in the mail, you know, usually that day or the next day, and they've got it. The only prerequisite or whatever is that they be an AIDS patient, And when you talk to a potential grant person, you know, they can rip your guts out with the stories they tell you. You know, like AIDS for some people has made beggars out of them.
I was laid off from work while I was in the hospital, not because of what I had, but the company wasn't doing very well. They let 4 of us go. And with that went my medical insurance. Then, having been diagnosed, no private insurance company would pick me up. And without any income, I couldn't pay the premiums anyway, so now I have Medi-Cal. And if I earn $1 on the books, I lose my Medi-Cal.
Because I did lose everything. Everything I had worked so long and so hard for. We all want to be successful, you know, and I finally got myself to the point where I could, I had money in the bank, I had a lovely home, nice car, I had the opportunity to travel, and slowly it just deteriorated and just slipped through my fingers, and it's because of I guess the depression you go through. And it's gone now, and unless they come up with something to cure this, then I'm not physically capable of doing it again, because it takes a lot of effort.
So you've lost everything.
I've lost everything.
And that's very depressing just to realize that now.
And that's all material stuff, you know. I'm not really interested in material things anymore.
But it is a sense of accomplishment, and you feel like
Well, sure.
you've lost everything that you've worked for.
Well, I did it once, and I know I'm capable of doing it again if you know, we can cure this. And
But your priorities now seem to have changed. If your outlook is kind of, you know, fatalistic in the sense of, well, it's, you know, I've lost it, but there are other things that are more valuable.
Life is more valuable. Health is more valuable.
Yes, when you've got your health, you've got everything, and we don't have it.
Friendship.
Yeah.
Friendships are more valuable.
I beg you to develop supportive networks around you. Bring your friends closer. Friends are good medicine. Bring them nearby. Call your friends this week. See how they're doing. Right. Take care of one another.
When he did, was diagnosed, I remember that very clearly. He came into the office, and I knew he had gone to the doctor, and we both had 10 o'clock appointments, and he came in about 5 to 10 or so. And I could tell by the look on his face that he had gotten bad news. And so we both went into his office and just sat down and held each other and cried and talked for a while. And I suggested that maybe he ought to go home, and he didn't want to. He wanted to go through his day and tell his clients. And that, I'll never forget that. That day was so difficult. And he left his practice after that, thinking at first it would be just for a few months because he was so tired. And I just saw him as much as possible. I would go over there whenever I could. We'd talk on the phone nightly, at least. I mean, talk 2 or 3 times a day. He was indeed my significant other for some time. So that through the ups, through the downs, through the hopes, through the fears, he was able to talk to me about it, and I was able to be there for him, and it was a great gift to me.
After 5 months of not having any contact, he called me on the day that he found out he had AIDS and wanted to tell me, because he did not want me to hear it on the grapevine. But the day he was in the hospital, this is his first of perhaps 5 or 6 hospitalizations to come, I was there that day and every day for the 15 days he was in, and that was really the turning point. We were then closer than ever, and in the remaining 8 months or so of his life, or 9 months, we kept getting closer and closer and closer, far closer and more intimate and honest and loving than I ever knew, truly ever possibly knew could be possible, that two people could love each other so much and so deeply.
You see, when there was a point 5 months maybe before Gary got diagnosed. When we explicitly set out to form a unique relationship. We were each single. We were neither of us real terribly pleased about that fact. He had just broken off with Matthew at that point, and I had been single for a couple of years. And we thought of being to each other as much as we could be to each other without being lovers. That is, we thought of traveling together and taking vacations together, of being in and around and for each other in every way except that romantic and sexual way that separates lovers from best friends. Best friends is a category of friendship that is greatly underrated and certainly underestimated by people. I'm sitting here saying to you that I had my greatest experience of love with a best friend, and I have had 3 very significant love relationships in my life. So I guess we succeeded.
I also want to particularly thank the community of people with AIDS. We are, the most loving, supporting group that I have seen. If one of us is sick or needs help, it's one phone call away. We have an incredible hotline, and that kind of love and care, to me, is one of the greatest demonstrations of what gay liberation is all about, our deep capacity to love one another. Also, far from being a depressing group, we're an uplifting group. We have our hard times, but we take care of each other. We're also a very funny group. If you've ever wanted to see gay humor at its best, getting you through the hardest times, hang around some AIDS people.
It's my birthday and I'm having a party up here. I'm having a party Thursday at Castro Station, and Mark asked me to bring flyers, and they're outside. I'll get them. And it's a benefit for my brunches that I do here on Sundays, because I pretty much hustle that money on my own. And people just make things for me, or they give me money, whichever works best. Sometimes I do fancy things like the whole shebang, roast beef, ham, and all that. Like, this is the 4th of July, and we're going to do something special, but then sometimes I just get pizza. It's very informal sometimes, and then other times, and now that it's summer, there's lots of fresh fruit and vegetable, and they love that. You can usually get them to eat stuff like that, like fruit salad, fresh green salad. They love, they love 7-Up, and they love anything that's not institution food, and once they start eating, they start feeling better. I tell you, the first day I came here was Easter Sunday, and I had an excuse, and I just went out, man. I had turkey, ham, we had potato salad, we had, relish trays, and I made Easter baskets, and I dressed up like a little Easter bunny, and I came up here, and it was very fortunate that day. They were all real healthy, pretty much, and they all came in here. We had Easter baskets hanging on the IVs and passing out the Easter baskets. Okay, I'll be right back. Okay. Hey, baby, how you doing? All right. I went in your room and you was sleeping. Here, I got a chair for you right here.
Are you?
Yeah, I was going to come back in. It's my birthday today, and I got ice cream and cake for you.
Okay. We'll turn off the camera here for you. So. Oh, you the hell with it. Oh, okay.
He's famous. He's famous. He's used to cameras and everything. And then I'll be right back. I'm going to go deliver this and then
Yeah.
all right. I think he wants more ice cream. You just... Hey, you're getting around pretty good on that thing.
Yeah, I am surprisingly enough.
That's great.
Things like that don't happen in my life. They take forever.
But this is very good. From not.
I'm going to take this out.
All right.
Sunday's my barbecue 4th of July buffet. What
I
you want?
can't make it.
You can't? You want some soda?
No, I want some
Napkin?
a napkin.
Is there anything that you'd like me to bring you on Sunday? Any particular food you like? Francisco said he wants red beets and chicken. What would you like?
Well,
Is there anything that you really like that I can bring for you?
that jelly cake.
Jello cake, I know. I got that down.
That's it.
You gonna eat the whole thing if I bring it?
No.
Just half, and you'll share it.
The limit.
Okay, no, I'll bring one of those. My sister made that. She asked me how you guys liked it. I'll tell her.
Oh, we loved it.
That was a big hit. Okay, we'll be here about 1 o'clock. So if you have any visitors during the week, invite them. And they're more than welcome to eat with us. Back at 1 o'clock on Sunday, they're more than welcome. I had a friend that was very ill, and he refused visitors. He didn't want anybody to visit him. And that was a really heavy trip for me, and I lost him. And I decided to do this because if I can keep one person out of all these people from feeling like that, we're going to get somewhere, because he was real sick for a long time, but I think he just gave up. And I don't want nobody here to give up. And I don't think that they will, but maybe they will. I don't know.
And I've been living in Elko, Nevada for 3.5 years.
How big is Elko?
About 20,000 people.
What did you do there?
I worked for a distributor.
And you say that you raise horses? Or?
Yeah, raise Appaloosas for show.
Are you in a relationship at all?
Yeah, we've been together for 3.5 years.
I was curious about the gay community in Elko. Is there such a thing, or were you?
Well, there was about 7 of us. And there wasn't a bar we congregated at or anything. We just had dinner parties.
But you knew about AIDS and KS there in Elko?
Yeah.
How did you find out about that?
Newspaper, and well, we discussed it a lot.
Just the regular newspaper or gay newspapers?
No, just
the Elko newspaper.
Yeah.
Yeah? Oh.
It's even in there.
Yes.
Well, you know, having about 7 gay people in Elko, I mean, kind of dismisses the whole stereotype of people having multiple partners. You were in a relationship, and the fact that, you know,
I'm monogamous too.
You've been in a monogamous relationship for 3.5 years.
So I caught it at least 4 years ago.
Wow.
Or came into contact with it, I guess I should say.
Well, that's interesting. That's one. I didn't know it had such a long gestation.
I didn't either.
Period. I thought 2 years was sort of dramatic.
Well, when the scare of AIDS first came out, you know, I was counting the months till I thought it was 3 years. And I counted the months, you know, till I was with him 3 years. And after that, I felt safe. You know, if it does take up to 5 years, can take up to 5 years, there's probably a lot of people that are walking around out there that...
Another thing that we've done, I think, is really that we've focused on psychosocial, emotional issues, seeing them as really very much equivalent, in some cases maybe even more important than the medical issues that come up.
How can you compare the healthcare here at San Francisco General in Ward 5B with where you
With Elko?
Yeah.
Well, in Elko, they wouldn't even come into my room unless they absolutely had to. When they did, they wore masks, gowns, and gloves. They just really had a bad attitude, you know. And here, it's incredible.
This is where I might need some help over here, you guys. Okay. What am I going to need? Here, just grab a hunk of tape here. And once I get this in, I ask you to just put that tape right up, not yet though, I mean once I get it in, just put it right across here, across my arm.
Across the butterfly?
Yeah, right across the green part, okay? I mean, I love doing this. I mean, I have such a fabulous time doing this. I mean, you know, I think, you know, I would much prefer to do this than... Okay, right. Not real hard now, just, okay. I was introduced to a physician here in LA who agreed to sign the orders. Getting the orders signed, or getting a physician to okay doing vitamin C is usually not very easy because vitamin C is considered holistic and it's not in the mainstream of medicine. I can't say that it's a cure, but it has definitely improved the quality of my life where, you know, if I'd been on chemo for half a year or if I'd been on interferon, I just wouldn't be able to tolerate things as well as I have. You know, I've gotten to the point now where I can screw around with things a little bit. I can experiment because I'm experimenting with me and no one else is doing it but me. And that makes me feel good to know. It's like, you know, I'm playing guinea pig, but I'm playing it with myself and I have the ultimate responsibility. You know, if I decide not to take this and take more of that, you know, I research into it and I talk to nutritionalists about it and see what they have to say about it. I make the decision and I go for it.
If we're talking about AIDS patients coming to a unit which is basically a behavioral psychosomatic place, but which is, what's different about it is that some of the non-traditional treatments are offered here, treatments that haven't been proved and validated and for which there's not data in the literature. So you have to say, why would people do that? Why would they come to a place like this or to any other kind of practitioner? Our experience and the reason we use these things is that they're, in the first place, very, very good for symptoms, very, very good for making people feel well. And although it's not intuitively obvious to people, Western medicine is not very good in those ways. When it's powerful in helping symptoms, it often is with drugs that produce unacceptable side effects or consequences, so we don't use those drugs.
The patient population that we're dealing with is an extremely exciting one for me to be working with. This is a group of people who are largely my own age, with a lot of the same life experiences that I have. The issues of being a straight physician taking care of gay patients is one that makes us all look at our own attitudes towards sexuality, and that's been an interesting process for me. The patients are largely middle class, very well educated, very sophisticated in regards to the information that they currently have about AIDS, so I'm constantly being challenged talking to patients. They have very, very informative questions to ask me, and they expect a lot of information to come back from me.
Initially, I had heard from somebody about DSMO and protein treatments in Mexico. So I went to Southern California, right across the border, and did 2 weeks worth of treatment down there. It was through a private individual who had connections with this doctor in Tijuana, and you go over once a day and get a shot. And I pretty much think it was a fraud.
Since August of 1982, I've been on a chemotherapy program. For me, the traditional treatment has been very successful. I know it hasn't worked as well with other people, but for me it's been very, very successful.
Have you coupled this with anything, any type of alternative medical treatment, anything that you've done on your own or sought out other than what was recommended by your doctors?
It's interesting. I thought that alternative methods of treatment was sort of hocus pocus, but I have explored some areas of alternative therapies. I've done biofeedback, to my hands and feet during the winter get very cold, and I've been able to raise the temperature in my hands from like 72 to 94 degrees in 15 minutes just by doing a slow breathing and mental process. I do moderate vitamin intake. I personally don't believe in the high megadose vitamin theory, but I do moderate vitamins. Visualization is something that I practice occasionally. When I was first diagnosed, I got in touch with Pac-Man, and I've used him to sort of chew up my cancer cells, chomping away. And I also do a type of meditation visualization when I get stressed. I sit down and take some deep breaths and imagine myself at the seashore, and am able to sort of let loose of some of the tension that I'm under.
But I think the alternative psychology world, in a way, is more open to doing that. There's fewer preconceptions about what is healthy. More inclined to take the view that being healthy is simply living your life to the fullest in the way that you want to live it.
Your training was in very traditional medicine, and how did you get into? I don't want to get into great depth, but how did you manage to effect the bridge between the two yourself? I mean, how did you get it?
By doing the straight medicine thing here in this hospital, I was running the general medical clinic, and by finding it lacking, not something you want to throw away by no stretch. The holistic world did not produce alpha interferon, for example, and won't. But there are a lot of problems that the straight medical model doesn't solve. And it turns out that there are some real useful things in that alternative world. So our belief is that you have to have them side by side, you have to have them very closely meshed in order to be sure that you don't, go astray, get too far off the deep end in either line.
I've come to terms about dying. I mean, if it came to the point where I did contract pneumocystis or something that really knocked me down, I'd prefer just to go. I'd prefer just to take a check and go. I wouldn't want to put myself through the bullshit or the expense. I wouldn't want to put anyone through the expense. And, if I knew that I was going to go, I'd rather just go. I don't know if that's right or not, though. I've known guys that, they didn't die until after their third bout with pneumocystis. And pneumocystis I've never had, and I don't know what it's like, but I'm sure it's not very pleasant, and I really don't know about that. I've thought about it. I've thought about it a lot, and, I'd say, yeah, I'd be real comfortable, knowing that I was going to die and all, because I know I'm going to die, but like I said, I'd rather be in a motorcycle accident or something like that. That's probably how I'm going to go anyway. I don't think this is going to do anything for me. I may be wrong, but I don't think so. I think it would be fine.
Has this changed you in any other ways? Just your outlook on life in general, priorities?
Well, for one thing, it sure made a lot stronger person. I've found strength that I never knew existed. I broke down and cried when I first heard it, but since then I think I'm going to beat this disease. I really do. And all my friends do. They've got a feeling, I've got a feeling, and I'm determined to beat it.
Treating symptoms, making people feel better, helping them relax, clear out their minds, makes it easier for them to then address the issues in counseling, like what does it all mean? How far do I want to go? There are people who will look deep into themselves and say, hey, I don't even want to fight this. Living is not that worthwhile to me. Traditional clinics don't usually tap that kind of energy. That's a very frightening message for traditional providers to hear. But it's real important to know, because such a patient will not be, quotes, compliant, be too ambivalent about treatment. So we do a lot of helping people here just figure, where is it you want to go? What are your priorities? If you're not going to beat this disease, what do you want to do with the remaining months that you have? Which treatments do you want to accept? There's a real cost-benefit kind of thing, often human cost, because a lot of the treatments are unpleasant. So people make very conscious decisions.
I don't think I'm afraid of dying. I don't enjoy the painful aspect of it. And I think the perversity of the AIDS illness is that it just doesn't seem to hit you with one big thing that puts you in a bed for 3 weeks and you die. It seems to just eat away at you, and a lot of AIDS patients die that way.
I mean, here you are facing the possibility of death, and I feel like I've come really close with that. Just about a month ago, it wasn't clear to, I don't think, any of us how long I was going to be able to keep going.
Yeah.
And I've spent a lot of time just sitting with myself. I mean, just literally sitting, doing nothing, kind of to let all the fears and all the kind of ghosts come up. It's been really terrifying at times, where I would just walk through the apartment and be pacing and pacing, trying to avoid dealing with what I had to deal with, which, you know, is try to prolong my life as long as possible. And sitting down with myself, I got less fearful rather than more fearful.
But there comes a time when there isn't anything one can do anymore. And I think one of the marks of a fairly competent doctor is to realize when there isn't anything more to do, and to be able to tell that to the patient, and be supportive throughout that kind of interaction.
Gary, it's nice to have you here.
It's nice to be with you.
Doctors have pretty much given up hope. The last time I heard is that...
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear to them that they said about 2 months. And I can feel it inside. I feel like I know better than they do. That there are all sorts of signs to me from inside that tell me that death isn't far away. It's close.
I wouldn't tell anybody I want to die, but I would just like to make, what time is left meaningful, and I think that's all that's important.
I also feel like I don't want to miss a moment by drifting off. It doesn't mean that every moment has to be meaningful, but I just want to be there. I don't want to miss it. But it's so funny that when I first got the disease, I was much more scared than I am now. Much more frightened, and thought of death was so terrifying, and never initially considered that I would die with it. I'll lick this, I know I will. I was so damn scared. Now I feel there's a peace right in here.
I really felt that peace that day that Flo and I came to visit you.
Oh, what a day.
In the hospital. I mean, despite all the stuff that was happening physically, I think you had warts and God knows what else was going on. There was such a feeling of peace there in being with you.
I think you two may have been the first to feel that from me, because I had wanted to get to that point, and in a way there's nothing you can do to get there, except just keep kind of letting go more and more. And that was such a lovely day. I'll never forget that. No, never. I don't think I've ever felt better internally than I do now. It's, I don't know how to say it. I don't think I've ever felt so. You have to come somehow to terms with yourself, because so much time is alone. And when you're facing your own death, you somehow have to come to terms with it. I guess I feel more at peace than I've ever felt in my life. Almost something that I've always wanted to feel. And I'm in a situation where I felt like I got to get there a lot faster than I'd certainly planned. I wish it happened in a different way, so that I didn't have to go through this to get to that really peaceful spot. But this is the way it is.
And so he seemed to sort of settle into himself and live as much as he could from that spot. Not that he couldn't still be a real bitch and couldn't still get gloomy or grumpy or stubborn or be difficult as hell to deal with, but that was his thrust, was to get as far as he could get in terms of what do you call it, what you will, self-actualization, realizing his fullness. I think he got there. I think he got as far as a person gets. He was luminous at the end. Being with him caused you to blow circuits and channels to pop open faster and wider than you really quite wanted it to happen, but it did, and you were then so glad that it did. And that's the stuff that I call love. That's what I think the experience of love is. And I think probably the luckiest thing in my life is that I got to have that experience with Gary. That I got to have that experience and that I got it with Gary.
My growth has come from looking into the face of suffering and not turning away from the pain, opening myself up to the pain, and not running away. I feel that in working with AIDS, I feel that in working with people with dying, we behold life as it is, not as we want it to be. And I feel stronger in that. That doesn't mean that I feel good, that I feel happy, that I feel blissful. Whenever I've worked with somebody that's died, I've spent many hours crying before and after their death. It's not an easy experience. But I do feel that I'm stretching the limits of my personhood in working with people through the dying process, and there is a reward in that.
We're all being invited to take stock and measure our lives according to their adequacy in the face of the possibility of a quick death. Very few, that's unusual. That's a very unusual situation. Wartime is the only thing I could think of that might bring it around. Anybody who gets that diagnosis that they have AIDS or they may be about to develop it is going to very quickly assess his life, its adequacy, and what needs to be changed, and probably set about making those changes and living out the best of it. The invitation is for us all to do that now. Now, there's no reason to wait. I or you or anyone around could develop that diagnosis next week. Why wait? Why wait?
And we should be around to support the other people, who are close to us, who actually are ill now, and learn something out of the experience. The people who I know who've dealt most effectively with fear have been the ones who've gotten involved and become volunteers in organizations to help out people with AIDS. And it's one of the most potent diffusers of fear, getting involved.
Stop by if you're a resident of the City of Los Angeles and put your name on our petition to the city government. We applied last week to get money from the government. Without your support and your signature showing that you think these services are needed, we may not get them. If you live in the City of Los Angeles, whether you're a registered voter or not, your signature on our petitions can help us get support from the city to keep providing.
This is a difficult time. There's no way around that. But we must go through this together. Our greatest asset has been the strength in our unity. We know difficult times, from the concentration camps to Stonewall, to Anita Bryant, to Prop 6, to AIDS and the fear and homophobia surrounding it. Each time, sticking together has made us the victors, not the victims. And feel our strength and connection here tonight. It's electric. So I ask, open your hearts to one another. Now more than ever, we need to show and demonstrate our love for each other. Treat your brothers with kindness. This is a fight for all of our lives.
It's more than you. It is more than me. No matter where we are a family. This dream is for all of us. This one can be real. And you can stop us now because of how you feel. It's more than you. It is more than me. Whatever things we have, they're for the family. We're not alone anymore. Now there are others there. There are others there. And that dream's big enough for all of us to share. So don't think you're going, you're not going anywhere. You're staying and taking your share. And if you get afraid again, and if you get afraid again, I'll be there, I'll be there. We are a family, growing stronger, growing wiser. We are a family, like a giant tree, branching out toward the sky. We are a family, we are so much more than just you and I. We are a family, like a giant tree, growing stronger, growing wiser, and we are growing free. We need you. We are a family.